Hello there and welcome to MILLIE's first masterclass session. This one is all about preparing for your PCS. So today we're going to go over some pretty high level things that you need to know how to do to prepare for your PCS. We have a ton of content coming at you, so we'll try to charge through that as quickly as possible. Hopefully you guys are excited about your move. If you have a PCS coming up at any point in the near future, probably you're here because you have a PCS coming either in the next couple of months or potentially in the coming years. So hopefully you guys can at least get your bearings. Also, hopefully you have received your PCS basics toolkit in your inbox. I'm going to be using that toolkit as sort of the basis for this conversation today, and you'll be able to follow along in your toolkit if you have that readily available. If you do not have that, feel free to reach out to us. You could also head over to the site, gomillie.com, to grab your download, and so you can follow along. And hello to folks who are coming in. If you're joining us, drop in the chat where you're watching from. Let me know when your PCS is happening so I can actually tailor the conversation a bit to help you kind of get your bearings again, and I can add any actionable advice possible. All right, so here we go. Let's jump right in. First of all, let me just say, we're super excited that you're joining us, and we're super excited for our presenting sponsor, New Day USA, for helping support this webinar series. These will be recorded. We will publish these after the fact. If you've registered today, you'll get the recording in your inbox as a nice little delivery as soon as we finish. And also we will produce these up on our MILLIE YouTube channel. If you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, I encourage you to do that. Just search The MILLIE Way on YouTube and you should be able to find us. Okay, so today we're going to cover several things. All right, we're going to try to walk you through the process, start to finish. Like I mentioned, this is pretty high level. If you have specific questions as we go, please use that chat. I'm watching it. I'll be able to answer you as we're having the conversation, or you can reserve your question for the end. I've also booked in some time for Q&A there as well. So today we're going to go over receiving your orders. We're going to go over terms and acronyms because you're going to hear a lot of letters. You can already see the very next point is a lot of letters. So if at any point I have said a combination of letters that you are not familiar with, please throw in the chat, clarify what you just said, and I'm happy to go back and do that. But we'll give you a kind of a primer on the acronyms up front. We're going to talk about your shipment options, how to get your actual things from point A to point B. You do have a choice in that matter, so we want you to know what those choices are. We're going to talk about some financial items. On our episode of The Unpack yesterday, we had a whole conversation about PCS expenses, and we want to make sure that you're prepared. You know what entitlements you have available to you, what reimbursements you have available to you, so that you're not finding yourself in a sticky situation financially when it comes to your PCS. We're going to talk through your move timeline very briefly. There is a lot to do in a very short amount of time. So we'll try to touch the high notes there. Again, reference back to your toolkit for way more detailed information there. We're going to touch on setting up your move. That is probably going to change here very soon. So we'll tell you what we know as of now, and we're going to encourage you to reach out to the folks who are in charge of that system to make sure to get you the most accurate and up-to-date information. And then we'll go over the resources that we have so that you can move, as we say, the MILLIE way. We're also going to do a giveaway today. So if you are watching live, lucky you. All we ask is that you drop a takeaway in the chat at some point during today's session. If there is something that you have not heard before, if there's a pro tip that we drop that, is like, oh, wow, I need to write that down, go ahead and write it down in the chat and the comments. We will go over those after this is over. And we're going to actually give away two $50 gift cards to Amazon to help you replace a set of curtains, let's just say, or whatever you choose to spend that on. We're excited to be able to offer that. So don't forget, I'll remind you again before the end of the session. Okay, so I'm your host. I'm Kelly. I am the COO of MILLIE. I started out with MILLIE primarily doing content production and writing some of the base guides and toolkits that you have access to now for free on the site. I love research. My husband is still actively serving in the Army here in Special Forces at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I have PCS 7 times. We have 2 kiddos. Usually we have 2 dogs. We do now as well. But because of the work that I do at MILLIE, I like to say that I have mentally PCS'd over 90 times. So yeah, not as taxing, but what we do is we like to try to pretend like we're actually moving to different duty stations. And we want to make sure that you guys have the information you need in order to be prepared to move to that duty station. So check back on the site, gomillie.com. Again, if you have questions about your upcoming duty station, what that area is like, what the housing is like, all sorts of great information gleaned from military spouses that we asked in focus groups to be able to help you get oriented to your new duty station before you even get there. So that's me. All right, let's start. Receiving your orders. This is the first thing that happens. All right. There's a lot of stuff that can happen beforehand. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of rumors. Your service member might come home and, hey, I think what is the Air Force says, vulnerable to move or vulnerable to PCS. I love that. You probably have an idea just in conversation with your service member that this is a PCS year. This is a year that you're going to be changing duty stations and you're going to need to pack up yourself, your life, your family, your house, and move to a new place. However, all of that is exactly what I just said. Those are rumors. Okay. Nothing is set in stone until you have a piece of paper in your hand that says PCS orders. Okay. So your service member will actually be told that they are moving, relocating from, this duty station to another. And that actually is the point at which when you can start making decisions and sign papers, right? So it's sort of like this thing that triggers a protection, essentially. You can sign a lease now because if the orders change, there are protections involved that says, oh, you know what, actually, we're going to allow the service member to break that lease, right? Or different things like that happen if you have orders, right? Firm, hard orders. If you don't have orders and you go signing leases, setting up utilities, things like that, and then you have to change course because guess what? They might tell you you're going to Kansas. And then a week before you leave, guess what? You're going to Okinawa, right? It happens. So make sure that you have the orders to be able to make decisions. But now I will also say you can do a lot of preliminary research before the orders are actually firm, right? Before you actually have those. So I encourage you to do that. If you have an idea of 2 or 3 top duty stations that you're headed to, go ahead and research them. Go ahead and get an idea of what area you want to focus on if you're going to move there, right? Like things like that are totally fine to do, but just don't sign any paperwork until you have your orders. Okay. Here's the letters. All right. So these are just some of the important acronyms. Okay. There are so many more than this that apply to PCSing or permanent change of station, as you see, number 3 there on my list. And there's a huge, I wouldn't say exhaustive list. There's a big list in our toolkit of things that you need to be familiar with. But for the most part, ask your service member if anything jumps out. These are some of the more important ones that I think you should know, and you just should know them off the top of your head. So we'll go over them really briefly. So CONUS and OCONUS just refer to where on the planet you are actually moving, and do you need to go across a huge landmass or an ocean to get there, right? Can you get in your car and drive to it? Basically, is kind of the way I think of it. So a CONUS is continental United States. That's the 48 states that make up the main United States. So minus Alaska, Hawaii. OCONUS, everything else. So that's super simple. All right. PCS, permanent change of station. TDY is a temporary duty assignment. There's a distinction here because of the different entitlements that are incurred or invoked, I guess, depending on how long that duty station assignment for your service member is, right? So a TDY doesn't actually trigger any of the move mechanisms. So if they're just going on temporary duty, and there's not necessarily a length of time associated with that, but if they're just going on a temporary duty assignment, it doesn't mean you need to pack up and move and go with them, right? But a PCS, you do. They do typically assume that the family is coming along. Therefore, a PCS incurs all of these other sort of travel and move resources. A DITY is a do-it-yourself move. Okay. I don't know where the T comes from, but it's in there, DITY. You're going to hear this interchanged with PPM, which is actually the new and official title or acronym for this type of move. So you're going to hear those interchanged. Technically, personally procured move is the way the DoD categorizes this move. So you're going to hear that from the official channels, but casually, socially, you're going to hear DITY more often. So just know that those two are pretty much one and the same. Travel Management Office are the folks on base. It's the DoD office that you're going to be dealing with for the most part to set up your move and to make sure that you've got everything scheduled, all the things. So you're going to want to know your TMO and your point of contact there, your POC at the TMO. You're also going to want to know DPS is the Defense Personal Property System. Again, slight little asterisks. these things might be changing. We are shifting the way in which the moves are being set up and also delegated. So more to come on that. But for now, DPS is a thing. Your government travel card, we are pretty sure that all of the branches now have this government travel credit card. It's basically a credit card that you're allowed to put charges on so that you're not floating your personal finances for things that you're going to need to wait to be reimbursed on. And it is actually mandated in some cases to use the government travel card. If you have questions about that, we had a great conversation yesterday on the Unpack. So if you head over to our YouTube channel, you can find that conversation about PCS expenses, and we chat a little bit more about that travel card. Household goods are your things. That's all your things. So HHG, you're going to hear a lot. That's your stuff. It's just your stuff. Okay. POV is your car, right? And then your TSP is the transportation service provider. Again, this may change with the new contracts that are happening, but for now, those are the TSP is think like Plymouth, right? Or whoever the big truck and the company is that has been assigned your move. The government basically says, hey, we have, 45 people that need to move this day. We're going to give this 10 to this company, this 10 to that company, this 10 to that company. So that company is your TSP, the transportation service provider, right? They have been delegated your move. So you want to keep up with your TMO contact, your travel office contact. That's your DoD official contact. And then at the same time, you also want to keep very handy who your TSP contact is. So there's going to be a person at this company, the moving company, who's going to sit in an office and be in charge of assigning your mover, your driver, the packing crew, all of those folks. So definitely hang on to their contact information, have it readily available, put it in your phone. I'm guilty of losing that very important phone number. These are the folks you're going to call if you have problems. Okay. Moving on. I touched on CONUS and OCONUS. So here's a map to just illustrate the fact. CONUS is any move within the continental United States. Most moves, you guys, are CONUS PCSs. So a lot of the stuff you're going to hear about is going to apply to a CONUS move. Usually you can hop in your car and drive there, right? You can pack up your car and drive some of your things there. You also have the option of doing that DITY move or the personally procured move if you are moving CONUS. If you are moving outside of the continental United States, you do not have an option of doing a personally procured move. It's a bit too important. The government is pretty sure that that's a bit out of our bandwidth and breadth of experience to be able to pull off an OCONUS move, rightfully so. It is super hard and super complicated. So you need to let them do that and rely on them to move your things. But for the most part, in the country or in the continental United States, we have a little bit of freedom to do that. So when we talk about options of how to get your stuff from point A to point B, there's essentially two options and then a hybrid of the two. All right. So the first option is your full service HHG move. Okay. This is where you go into the travel office, you set up your move with the travel management office, the person who's in charge of, booking and assigning all the things. You say, I want a full service HHG move. And they say, okay, cool. So the first thing you do, set it up. They're going to assign you a travel service provider, which is the moving company. The moving company is going to reach out to you and say, we need to come see your house. A lot of this is done virtually now, which I think is pretty cool. You FaceTime the people through your house, and they're going to estimate how many things you have. How much does that stuff weigh? Actually, is the crucial point here. And they're going to book your move based on how much stuff you have, where you're going, where you're leaving from, and what their schedule is looking like. And your orders have a date on it that needs to be your service member's report date. And that because of the contract that these moving companies have with the DoD, they have to make it happen. They got to get you to that duty station by that date. So they're going to assign you in their schedule based on, when they can, when makes sense, obviously logistically for them to assign you a date. So they'll show up, they'll pack your stuff. They'll have a packing crew come out usually 1 day or 2 days. And then usually several to possibly more days later, they will have the actual driver who's driving the truck come and load all of the things with their crew onto the truck. And then they will say, we'll be at your destination on XYZ date. You don't often have a ton of say in that, but that's when they'll be there. And that's when you need to get there to either accept your stuff or you tell them where to put it, which means storage. That's a very simplified way of explaining how the full service HHG move happens. The main thing here is that you don't have to do it. Okay. They will come in and you could literally do nothing. I don't encourage that, but you could literally do nothing. And they come in and they pack all your things and they are liable for all your things. There is also an agreement there, an insurance in place there, that if things break, you can claim that. And they pack it all up, they put it in a truck, and they assure that they will get it to you by a certain date at a certain address, wherever that address may be. So this is a very common option. Okay. A lot of times you're going to hear people talk about being like only in favor of HHG moves or this full service move, or only doing the personally procured move. Usually it's because they've had a bad experience with one or the other, and bad experiences happen. Okay. But we're going to try to get you to a point where you are an informed consumer, or customer, client, whatever we're considered, and that you can advocate for yourself in these situations. So option 2 is the other extreme of this, which is the full DITY, or your personally procured move. What happens here, and in both cases, you need to tell the travel office how you plan to get there. They want to know that you have a plan, right? So you'll tell them, okay, I want to do a full DITY. If you do that, it also triggers some of the entitlements that come along with the full DITY. So you're saying, I'm going to move everything. Just tell me when I need to be, where I need to be. Okay. People do this in a lot of different ways. So you can hire your own people, right? I don't think that that's often financially advantageous. If you were in a position where maybe you've got a dual income household, or maybe you have an uncle who runs a moving company, I don't know. If you have some sort of scenario that makes that financially advantageous for you to be your own travel management office, essentially, or your own TSP, and you can hire a moving company to come in and pack your stuff, and like civilians do, right? Civilians do this all the time. You can do that. I will say that you're probably going to come out of pocket a good bit, because think about the way that the DITY system is reimbursed is based on what the government could have paid their contractors to do the move. Now, one thing we know about government contractors and contracts is that they often take the lowest bidder, right? So you're competing against something that is probably significantly less expensive than if you were to go out and source it privately, right? So just keep that in mind. What most people do is they pack their own boxes. Maybe they save boxes from the last PCS, which is totally fine to do. Maybe they grab boxes from somebody in the neighborhood that just moved in, right? They pack all their own things. They have crates, they have tough boxes, they have, all these different moving blankets, supplies. Maybe they rent a U-Haul or like a Penske truck. Maybe they put it all in containers, right? And have a container shipment move all of their things. The pros here is that you have a lot more control. Obviously, if it breaks, you broke it. There's no one to like complain to or file claims with, right? So I guess that could be a con. And I think a lot of cases it's like, oh, no, I feel better if I broke it. I'd be angry if someone else broke it. So yeah, you have control, when your stuff's going to get there, exactly where your stuff is, how many people have touched your things, right? Usually it's just you. So you retain ownership and control. However, you're strapped down with all of this stuff now, and you've got to figure out how to travel. And if you don't have experience doing this, it can be really overwhelming. So just know, again, there are resources on both sides of this fence. There are people that DITY every single move. We had a lady on our live stream who talks about she's done like 18 DITYs or something crazy. I mean, but they're good at it now. They've got it down to a system. They've got it down to an art. They're kind of minimalist by nature, so they don't have a ton of stuff. So these are all factors to consider when you're thinking about what you're capable of, and also consider your time. So a lot of people do this DITY move and think, oh, we can make money. Well, okay, sure. You are probably putting a deposit of cash into your bank account from the move. But if you think about it, the government is essentially just paying you to be the movers. So if that's something you're into and down for, or maybe you have the time available to do that, give it a shot. Again, tons of resources out there to help you, hacks and packing tips and whatnot that could be advantageous if you decide to go that route. Huge thing here too is you have to keep your receipts and your weight tickets. So those things do get reimbursed, right? So you're not totally on your own, especially financially. They'll reimburse you. The DoD will reimburse you for a lot of your expenses when it comes to your full DITY or PPM. You can also potentially have like tax write-offs and implications there that you want to stay abreast of. Chat with your, financial consultant or tax preparer person that you have to make sure that you are keeping the correct documents to be able to capitalize on that. But you definitely need to keep your receipts and a weight ticket. Say you have a truck, U-Haul, or maybe you have a trailer or something. You have to weigh the truck empty And then you have to weigh the truck full. And that's essentially how they determine what weight you have that you are moving. There is a limit to how much weight the military will reimburse for or move for you, regardless of which way you move, if you're doing a full service or you're doing a DITY. I believe the limit is 18,000 pounds if that hasn't changed. That's as far as they'll go when it comes to reimbursing you. And there's a price per pound. Also know that that weight increases with rank and years in service. So if you're just starting out, you probably have a different bracket of weight that you are allowed. Anything above that weight, you can move, but they're going to send you a bill for. Okay. So they're basically saying like, hey, there are limits. We think it's reasonable for a family of this size with a service member that's been in this long. You guys should have this much weight. They will also pay for professional gear. You'll see pro gear pop up in a second. So just know that, say your service member has a ton of really heavy stuff that is military issue stuff that they still have to move with them. The military will pay for that to be moved. That doesn't count towards your weight. So again, stay organized, keep things as separate as you can. It definitely counts when it comes to moving. So the hybrid option that I talked about is actually called a partial DITY. I think personally, everyone should always do a partial DITY. And what this means, even if you're doing the full service move, you can still take your own segment of your own things with you if you want to. So again, this refers to your CONUS move, which is going to be the majority of the PCSs that you have during your time. I always keep special things, right? I always keep a vacuum in the vehicle that we're taking because I want to clean before and after. I always keep documents, like all of the birth certificates, immunization records, kids' school records, all of these things that you'll see highlighted in the different PCS binder resources and checklists and things out there. You want to keep that stuff with you, right? If you have the option to. Sheets for the first day in your new house. If you have a mattress or an air mattress, you want to have an air mattress. There's all these kinds of things that you want, like comfort items or just things to have closely with you. Some people even rent like a U-Haul and just take maybe their antique furniture or heirlooms or special things or things that the military won't move, right? You can be reimbursed for moving a portion of your household goods. You are moving it. You are moving it from point A to point B. So the military will repay you for that. Again, you have to weigh, if it's just your personal vehicle, like a car, sedan, go weigh that bad boy empty, weigh it when it's full of your stuff, loaded down, even just your suitcases for travel count for this because it's still a part of the things that you own that you're moving along. So you want to get a weight for those things and track all the different ways in which you travel. Don't blow this off. You will move with stuff. Okay. You're going to travel with stuff. So make sure that you are being compensated for that little bit of effort on your part. Okay. We talked about finances. So there are some things to note here. And this is funny. I had this conversation with the financial advisor that we had on our show the other day about how we didn't realize until 3 or 4 moves in that there were certain entitlements available to us. For example, for the first 3 moves that my service member and I did together, we slept in the house when it was empty. We got sleeping bags and air mattresses and literally camped out because we didn't want to spend money on a hotel. I didn't even consider that to be an option. You don't have to do that. They will actually pay you to stay in a hotel, even if it's still at your origin duty station, like the duty station you're at or the duty station you're headed to. You get 10 days of permissive TDY, I think is what it's called. And the military will reimburse you for that. You do not have to do that, especially with little kids, y'all. Don't be more uncomfortable than you have to be. So let's just go through really quickly the entitlements that you generally have available to you. Obviously, the first one is that the military will provide a way to move your household goods and your personal vehicle or privately owned vehicle. If you're going to OCONUS, they'll move your car, not CONUS, but they'll provide a way to make sure that those items get from point A to point B. Some other entitlements that you have are something called MALT, monetary allowance in lieu of travel. What this is per mile. It's a mileage. There's also per diem. So you'll get per diem for the service member at the service member rate, whatever that is, obviously fluctuates, rank, all that stuff. Dependents also get a per diem. So between 12, or if you're 12 and older, they get 75% of the authorized per diem rate, and dependents under 12 get 50%. So this is pretty cool. Also kind of helps offset meals, things like that. So you definitely want to make sure that you are taking advantage of that. DLA is dislocation allowance. That's also going to help offset some of the upfront costs that you're going to be spending to get from point A to point B. A lot of folks use this towards like airline tickets, things like that. And then there's something called temporary lodging reimbursement. And this actually, you get about $290 a day for a max of 10 days. Again, keep your receipts. You have to turn those in. This isn't just cash they hand you. This is a reimbursement. So you have to prove that you spent that money. So we didn't get this camping out on the floor, but we could have stayed in a hotel and been reimbursed for it. So just something to think about. And during our conversation on the live stream yesterday, that came up. And again, I thought I was the only one that did that. And apparently it's really, really common and people just don't know that that's a thing. So let me just stress that there. If there's ever a time where you're like, why are we having to pay for this? Ask that question to whomever needs to be in charge of the answer. We talked about the orders, and you guys, this is extremely high level. I literally went through our toolkit and grabbed like the top 2 or 3 items that I feel like need to be mentioned. There are so many more things that we could talk about when it comes to your timeline and things that you need to be doing to get prepared. So just know, again, this is just super high level. Check back on the toolkit for a much more exhaustive list. So when you get your orders, this sounds silly, but read them. Okay. We expect our service members to read the orders. I assume they do, but read them yourself. Ask for that copy and just read through them, because believe it or not, all of the entitlements, things like that, those are all listed out on the orders. Dates, really important things are on those orders that you could just at least be aware of. You're probably going to want to get a copy for yourself as well. There's just all sorts of different things that will require a copy of the orders. So make sure that you have that at least accessible or handy, especially if you are taking on a chunk of the PCS tasks list, right? So make sure you have that. Get organized. Okay. I think I bring up PCS binder a couple of points down from here, but you could go ahead and start that now. All right. And the orders go in the front cover. All of the copies of all of the orders go there. Get yourself organized and start wrapping your head around, where you're going to live. All of the questions that you could have been doing beforehand should already be kind of like tumbling around, right? So where are you going to live? If you're going to pursue employment at the next duty station, you've probably already kind of thought through some of these things. Once you get the orders though, that's your stamp to say, okay, go, right? So hopefully you at least have a starting point of considerations that you've already sort of been through and sorted through in your mind. All right, 3 months prior. Hopefully you got your orders prior to 3 months prior. Sometimes you do not. And I totally sympathize with that, you guys. But if you have the luxury of starting out at 3 months prior, the first thing you want to do is fine tune your budget. So you should have a PCS budget. If you do not yet, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to go ahead and start thinking through what that can look like. Again, through conversations that we've had the past couple of days with folks, we're seeing that military families are coming out of pocket, meaning they are not reimbursed for up to $5,000 per move. I talked to somebody yesterday who even said they try to keep a $10,000 PCS budget in place. It seems huge, but also at a certain point, you've accumulated a lot of stuff. You've got a lot of people to move. You got a lot of things to reinstate. There are so many little things and big things that add up very, very quickly. So I want you to go ahead and start thinking about your budget. Okay. You're going to want to also research the area, decide on your housing options if possible. Lucky for you, we have a ton of great resources that I'll bring up later, but you can do a lot of this on our site on gomillie.com. You can look up your bases that you're headed to. You can look up some of the different toolkits that we have that will help guide you through different considerations. Like if you're planning to purchase a house, we have toolkits for that. If you're looking at evaluating neighborhoods, if you need help moving your kiddos from one school to the next, we have resources galore for those sorts of things. So I encourage you to head over to gomillie.com. See if we can help you out there. You'll also potentially turn to your Facebook groups, your network. Your network is huge. So ask folks around you and in the military community about different duty stations. You'll want to notify your landlord if you are in a rental situation that you will be moving now that you have orders, regardless of whether your lease is up at any given time. you still need to give them notice. So do them a favor, especially if you're renting from a military landlord, just give them that heads up. It's a courtesy to let them know, hey, this is probably the last day that we'll be paying you rent. Right? If you're shipping a vehicle, go ahead and make arrangements there. If you haven't already created your PCS binder, now is definitely the time, because again, you're starting to make decisions, you're starting to accumulate documents. So you want to make sure that those documents have a place to live. All right. Set up any medical appointments that you need to take care of before you get to the new duty station, because remember, it takes a minute to establish care and other sorts of things at your new duty station. Maybe the new dentist that you have can't see you for 4 months and you needed a checkup before you left. So go ahead and kind of sort through those sorts of things. Just think through, like, on an annual basis, what kind of appointments do you, members of your family, have? Your service member is getting this as well, and their like login portals and dashboards, they're getting alerted to all of these things that they need to take care of and wrap up before they leave this duty station. You need to do the same thing for yourself and for your family. If you need a power of attorney, POA is power of attorney. Sometimes this is a necessity because you and your service member are conducting the PCS separately. So again, their name is on the orders, the service member. So if you need to be able to do things like sign a lease or anything major, you're going to want and need a power of attorney to do so. So if you anticipate that being something that you will need, go ahead and get that sorted now. And then you could start purging. That's kind of the fun part. So as you're starting to kind of mentally organize and wrap your head around what this move is going to look like, what things you're taking, if you already know where you're moving and you know that certain pieces of furniture are not going to work, this is a great time to go ahead and list those things for sale and pad your PCS budget, or give away things that you might not need. If you have snow gear from Alaska and you're moving to Florida, that folks in your family will outgrow by the time you potentially ever make it back to a place that needs snow gear, go ahead and get rid of that stuff. You don't need it. All right. 2 months out. This is when you start thinking about transcripts for your kids' schools and enrollment at new schools, especially if you know where you're headed. That second part may come later once you secure housing, but definitely start gathering your kids' documents, sort of like in preparation for essentially a resume for them, right? Like, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of not only the classes they've taken, some of the extracurricular things they've done. If you have high schoolers, you're going to want to start thinking about, all the things that will help them on their way beyond school, college, things like that. So make sure that you start wrapping those things up 2 months prior. Make hotel reservations for your duty stations, both of them, during the move, if you can. If you want to go ahead and plan your road trip, you can do that as well. It depends on how flexible you want to be during that. But if you want to make reservations in anywhere specific, get those done in advance. You need to handle your utilities, insurance, things like that. Set up and, shut down and set up dates for all of those things are super important. Again, you need to also know where you're going to need to pay deposits. If you're going to get a refund from a deposit you've already put down for a utility provider, you need to go ahead and start considering that in your PCS budget so that you know what's coming and going, and to track down things if you need to, right? Pet records are important too. This is a good time to do that. Also, you can notify your bank, credit card agencies to let them know that you're going to be spending money in a variety of places. Just let them know where you're headed so you don't run into a situation where they flag your card for fraud or anything like that. All right. So 1 month out, we're talking about things like mail forwarding. You want to check in with DEERS, make sure that they know that you're headed to a new duty station. You want to check your expiration dates on things, specifically like your military dependent ID. It's much easier to get that sorted before you leave than it is to deal with it at a new duty station with new offices and new protocols and things. So go ahead and take care of that. Prescriptions are good to go ahead and pick up if you can to get you over the hump until you have your new provider established. Get your car serviced before you go. This is always important. And go ahead and start cleaning out things like your pantry and your freezer. 2 weeks out, confirm everything, and you're going to start your do not move pile. My pile has grown into an entire room. So you might find yourself in a situation where you have like a restroom or a hall closet or something that you literally like tape off and keep the movers from touching it. And those things are going to be the things that you put in your car or maybe a U-Haul and travel with you, right? We talked about that partial DITY. As much space as you have for it, you can fill. So all of the things that you want to make sure that do not go on the moving truck are labeled do not move. So again, that could be a pile. That could be a bathtub that you curtain off and say, don't touch this stuff. It could be an entire room where you're sorting things that you don't want them to touch or move. And you need to make that very, 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 very clear. But for the most part, they know the deal. So if you tell them this is my do not move, they hopefully won't touch it. All right. 1 week prior, you're going to start packing like your actual, suitcases, things like that. Again, shove that stuff in the do not move area so that the movers aren't tempted to grab it while they are in your house and the chaos is ensuing with the packing and all the things. You can, if you can, highly recommend arranging child and pet care, especially when you're moving out, because you still have connections. Maybe the kiddos can go play at a friend's house or something for the day. It is really hard to track what's going on with the movers. But when you have kids running around, it just makes it exponentially harder. They get in the way, they could get hurt. Pets, same situation. We've heard horror stories of like cats being stuck in the shipment because they were hiding in a dresser when the movers picked it up, or dogs running away, things like that. Make sure to crate them, move them out of the way, or have arrangements for them to be elsewhere. On the day of the move, I thought about cataloging, what all happens. Like, if you're new to this experience, it's just an experience that you just have to go through. I have this sweet couple. They're so happy and they're so calm and they seem like they're taking their time and they're cherishing this clock or something. I just want to leave you with that image and give you hope. All kidding aside, it's crazy. It's hectic. It's exciting. It's frustrating. There are a million people, it seems, in your house going in so many directions, and there's paper flying and it's noisy. Kids are cranky. I mean, no doubt everyone's hungry. I mean, there's just a lot that goes on. Be patient, right? Be kind, be graceful, be assertive. These are still your things. I know often it doesn't feel like we are the customer in the situation, and that's because we're not. The DoD is the customer. We are just essentially a cog in the wheel, so to speak. So you need to make sure that you're still asserting that you know that you have rights in this situation, right? Often the movers are great. Sometimes they are not. So you just make sure that you've got kind of eyes on everything, that they know that you're there, but there's no reason to be overbearing unless given a reason. So just kind of take that in stride. They're doing their job, just like it's your job to make sure that, everything is accounted for and treated with care, and will arrive ultimately at your new duty station. The one thing too that I wanted to mention here is that the movers are going to take an inventory of all the boxes because they're responsible for, however many boxes they say exist. For the most part, they're great about this, but you need to check behind them. Okay. You need to make sure that if they put, however many boxes on the truck, that's how many boxes come off the truck. Okay. It's a pain, but it is a very, very, very real and crucial component of making sure, especially with the full service move, that everything that you own did in fact show up, especially if your stuff changed hands. So if your stuff went to storage at any point in the process, then you need to make sure that all of the things came out of storage and back on the truck and now back into your home. So keeping that inventory as detailed and accurate as possible. Don't feel bad about making them wait until, like, if you can't find box number 15 or a rug. I missed a whole entire 8x10 rug once. Didn't show up. And I just happened to be walking through the house when they were packing up to leave. They were done for the day. Thanks y'all so much. It's been great, blah, blah, blah. Like, where's my rug? Couldn't find it. It was the last thing they put on the truck. And because my shipment was in with 3 or 4 other shipments, they had run out of room in my little section of the truck and they threw it in the very back. Oh, we'll remember that. Well, they weren't going to remember that at all. So I had everyone like, hey, you guys have to help me find this rug. You can't leave until we find the rug. If I can lay eyes on it and check that it's here, fine, free to go, but no one's going home until the rug is found. It took 2 hours for the guy to remember that he threw it on the back of the truck. So they finally found the rug, but an 8x10 rug is not something that is easy to replace and not something that I anticipated financially having to replace. So just make sure that you know that you are an active participant in this move. It is not just something that happens and you're just given the dice, right? Or given the cards that you're given. So make sure that you are advocating for yourself. Make sure that you're delegating appropriately. If you don't have, extra sets of eyes, try to enlist folks to help you. Our scouts are actually available to help with HHG moves in most locations. So if you are in a position where you can outsource just an extra set of eyes or like an assistant for the day of, that's super helpful, mostly because they've done it before. They know what they're doing. They can be just an extra adult in the room to help you monitor and track the situation. Also, they've gotten a full night of sleep the night before. So they're coming into this a bit more clear-headed and might actually have some advice for you to take along the way. So I just want to drop that little nugget there. If that's something that is potentially interesting for you to be able to tap into, we have those services available from some really great folks. Take breaks as often as you can, get as much sleep as you possibly can. Back to don't camp on the floor if you don't have to. Get a good night's sleep because you'll need it. It's a very involved process. Okay. So now I want to tell you guys a little bit about the services that we have at MILLIE. We do not move things. We are not movers, but we can help you with almost every other aspect of your PCS. So I encourage you to check out some of the resources that we have available on our site. We have installation guides to help you get a feel for the place that you're moving to and help you be a more informed decision maker when it comes to where you're going to live, whether it's on post, off post, whether you plan to rent or you plan to buy. We have information for everyone there. Again, gleaned by military spouses who actually were stationed there at the time. So we have those available. We also have a library of toolkits at this point. I think we're up to 6 now to kind of just deep dive into the different aspects of the military housing sort of component of this lifestyle. So we talk about schools, we talk about VA loans a lot. We talk about buying your first house if this is a new thing for you that you're going to be exploring. We also talk about being a military landlord because often folks find themselves in a position or plan to be in this position of purchasing a house. And instead of selling it when they move, which, is usually only a couple of years, they keep it as an investment property and become a military landlord. So we have some resources for you there as well. We also have this really amazing network of real estate agents called Agent Heroes, and they are all vetted specifically for a couple of criteria. So one, they have to have a connection to the military. So all of our real estate agents are either veterans or they are military spouses or something very close to that. There are a ton of amazing real estate agents out there who help the military or who have military clients who are passionate about supporting the military. But we think there's just something special about working with someone who has actually PCSed before and has actually been in our situation. There's a shortcut there, there's a shared language, shared experiences that can really go a long way for making sure that you have the best experience possible. They're also super savvy with the VA loan. They also have had to have been in business for several years. That tells us that it's not a hobby, that they actually enjoy what they're doing and that they are in it for the long haul and that they are available for you. So we will personally match you with someone if that is something that's on your radar, and you can interview those folks and decide who to work with. We also have our MILLIE Scouts, who I mentioned earlier, who are military spouses standing by to help you with different task location-based things. So think TaskRabbit, but for military families. So typically they help with, recon, essentially like checking out a rental property before you sign a lease, sending you information about it. They help support military landlords in the decisions that they need to make. And then also are available for things like helping you organize your home, run errands during move day, all those sorts of things. They're also available to just kind of pick their brains, which is kind of cool too. And then we also, one service that I probably should have mentioned earlier that we've just launched is called MILLIE Move. And it's actually a move concierge. So you could call up or sign up on our website on the portal, let us know where you're moving to, where you're moving from, and then we can actually assign you with a concierge who can help you change over your utilities, shop for a new cable provider, shop for a moving truck or a U-Haul or a container situation. They can actually do all of that for you. We have a great checklist over there. So it's kind of like a virtual PCS binder. We have all sorts of service providers over there that you can, search through and vet. If you need a plumber, right? All those kinds of things you can find over there. And what's cool is that your concierge is free. First of all, you can literally call your concierge up and say, hey, we're going to move on July 3rd, make it happen. And they'll say, okay, great. And they'll get a little bit of information from you and they'll be able to set up all of your services, forward your mail, all kinds of stuff like that. It's really cool. Plus we'll keep your information for you so that it's all in one place. That way, next time you move, you can go back to that same site and reference back, all the things, right? It's really great. Okay. The last thing that I want to mention too, especially if you're thinking about purchasing a home at your new duty station, we have some really great resources, compliments of New Day USA. who are helping support some of our lender resources or resources for folks who are looking into, getting a mortgage. So if you head over to our site, gomillie.com, if you look right across the top bar, you'll see some information about the VA home loan. There's a great calculator over there that'll tell you how much you can afford roughly, and then also ways to connect with the folks at New Day to chat with them about whether or not a home purchase is in your future. That is all that I have for you guys today. If you're watching this on the replay, feel free to put your questions in the comment in whatever space and platform you're watching this on. I will definitely be tuned in and paying attention to this after the fact. For those of you who joined us live today, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and shut down the webinar so we can tackle your questions in private. But I do just want to also mention that we're going to be hosting these webinars once a month for the next 12 months. So I'm super excited to be bringing this content to you all. We're going to be talking about choosing schools. We're going to be talking about buying your first home. We're going to be breaking down and understanding the VA loan. So it's a bit more of a deep dive on the VA products there. We're also going to be talking about OCONUS moves in a bit more detail. We'll be talking about all kinds of awesome topics coming up. If you have a topic that we haven't covered or don't plan to cover, please reach out, let me know. We are happy to bring that information to you and hopefully provide you some value and bring some calm to the chaos of your upcoming PCS. So until next time, keep an eye on the website, keep an eye on our social media, keep an eye on our YouTube channel where we're posting a ton of great content each and every week. And we will be in touch and let you know about all the new resources coming up very soon. Thanks, everyone.